ップ発動。セブンスロードフォース。相手モンスターの直接攻撃が宣言された時、お前がセブンスロードを特殊召喚してくれたおかげで発動できるぜ。ドラゴンエンカウント。手札のドラゴン族1体を特殊召喚できる。選ぶのはもちろんこいつだ。
Hello and welcome back to another breakdown, now going over episode 52 featuring a highly anticipated rematch between Yuga and Luke. Now there are a few negative aspects about this episode that I will touch on later, but I'll begin with some of the positives. Going over the staff, we have Shogo Kawamoto back as storyboarder, Naoki Hishikawa as episode director, and Hatsue Nakayama back again as the Chief Animation Supervisor, with Eri Ishikawa as the Assistant Chief Animation Supervisor, assisting him. Despite having helped board half of last week's episode, Kawamoto is back once again with his A-game to finish off the season finale, using his impressive sense of scale I love so much, as it's appropriate when depicting two full fields full of aces. This also carries over into each battle as the duel begins to ramp up, as each impact is animated with the right amount of intensity that only could be shown in this climactic battle, crescendoing into Luke's crazy as hell final attack, all the while aided by Kawamoto's perfect choices in music for each scene. While the storyboard and the duel content itself is outright fantastic, there are quite a lot of either uncorrected or rushed drawings throughout this entire episode that the Chief Animation Supervisor just couldn't get to, instead prioritizing important dialogue or action scenes. It's no secret at this point that Nakayama has been spread quite thin across the episodes during this arc, with very short breaks between his episodes. So naturally he wasn't given a lot of time to work with. So why did this happen? Well, typically, as in every TV anime production, you would be given a regular animation supervisor rotation, where if a certain supervisor were to work on, say, episode 2, they'd be rotated out and come back on episode 7, for example. Now, how often an animation supervisor rotates around depends on how many supervisors are working on a particular project. And the gap between those episodes is usually how long they have to work on their episodes. But what's happened here is that other supervisor teams like Tadano Matsushita and Studio Guts' Shingo Fujisaki have been given less episodes to supervise in the rotation, causing other supervisors to pick up the slack, working on more episodes than they would normally. Now, Tadano and Matsushita are the character designers for this show, so obviously they have to contribute to that on top of drawing the various promotional material for the show, while Shingo Fujisaki from Studio Guts has been tasked exclusively with handling climactic episodes to each of the arcs. My guess being that since their episodes are of a higher quality than most, their episodes are given higher priority. This of course is just my theory, so there could be other factors that I just don't see contributing to Nakayama supervising more episodes. With that out of the way, let's move on to the animation highlights. Now, while this episode is technically in-house, the key animator credits do tell an entirely different story. Half, if not most, of the key animators on this episode are either freelancers or help from other studios, so they were clearly scrambling around for animators to help work on this episode. It's also clear by the finished product that this episode wasn't given a whole lot of production time. There's a heavy reliance on reused cuts even outside the typical bank animation, and dialogue scenes are full of lingering stills or sliding images. I of course have to remind you that SEVENS is being made alongside the Shaman King reboot, so they do have a number of their in-house key animators working on both shows. It isn't all doom and gloom, as there is a fair amount of good animation, in this episode. Starting off in the first half of the episode, we have Taichiro Ohara, who typically animates on episodes outsourced to Studio Guts, but he's back this week. He animates Luke's attack on Vost Vulcan, which is unfortunately very limited, but his explosions and debris work here is very recognizable. He is of course the former Dragon Ball Z animator who I briefly mentioned in my episode 11 breakdown. This is the only bit of animation from him that I've managed to successfully spot, so I'm glad about that. Next is the shining MVP of the episode, Shinya Yamamoto, who animates Meta Gaius' summon, which seamlessly blends into the CGI portion of the summoning animation. This cut comes before the previously mentioned Ohara cut, of course. Next, still staying with Yamamoto, animates Luke's final attack as he literally becomes the ammo for Drogaius' attack and is then shot out, ending with him socking Sevens Road in the face. This is by far the best work I've seen from Yamamoto during Sevens' entire run, and I'm so glad he's been given a chance to finally let loose and single-handedly saving this episode for me. I've been a little negative throughout this episode, but I'm glad I finished it off a little positively. Next episode we have Tadano and Matsushita supervising. This is the regular cooldown episode before the new arc starts, so I'm expecting it to be very limited in its animation with a very small key animator list. We should also be getting the new opening soon, so expect me to do a separate breakdown for that later on. So with that, see you in the next video.